All right, the next practice feature that we're gonna go through is the nose. So again, you need clay, you need a few different tools, a cup of water, and either a mirror or a picture that you're able to use as a reference, all right? So what you're gonna start with is more of a rectangular shape. Okay, so I'm gonna start with kind of a flat slab, a little bit longer and more narrow to actually fit the shape of the nose onto that piece of clay. I would recommend that you try to keep these practice features as close to life size as possible. And then you can adjust the scale on your actual form after you have the form built. Okay, so we'll start with that slab. Again, doesn't have to be perfect because you're not gonna fire it. You're gonna grab a piece of clay and you're gonna roll it into a coil. Now with the nose, if you were to look at your nose, you'll notice that the part of your nose where your nostrils are should be a little bit wider than the bridge of your nose. So as I roll my coil, I'm gonna make sure to keep one side a little bit thicker than the other. So I want it to be even all the way throughout, meaning like consistent thickness all the way around. But towards one edge, I'm just gonna make that thickness a little bit smaller. Okay, it is important to have a pretty nice coil as you're working on this, just because it kind of sets you up with a solid base to work from. So there are some areas that I kind of need to clean up in the coil that I've created. All right, so notice one side a little bit more narrow, one side a little bit larger. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut off the excess ends that I don't need. So you can either use a fettling knife or a needle tool. I'm going to slice that off, okay, where you want your nose to be. All right, from there, you're going to slip and score this into place. So I'm just going to kind of do a visual placement of where these need to line up. And then again, adding water and pressing it into place. Okay, as I do that, I'm gonna kind of press this bottom part down and start to bring these parts out to create the nostrils of my nose. Okay, so I wanna keep the bridge nice and small, adding more clay down towards the bottom. I don't wanna lose the roundness of my coil, okay, because that's the three-dimensional aspect of my nose. All right, from there, I'm gonna take the wooden tool and I'm just going to kind of smooth that into place. Okay, when you actually do your portrait, this is gonna be what attaches your nose to your face. I'm gonna do that on both sides. You'll notice if you're looking at your nose, okay, kind of where your nose meets your eye, it starts to kind of widen again. And so when you do that on your actual face, you wanna make sure that you have that accurately depicted. But for this practice, you're just kind of taking the segment before you actually reach your eye. Okay, so from there, it's just a matter of really sculpting out the finer details of what you see. So my nose is pretty narrow, so I'm going to bring this up a little bit more. I'm going to leave this clay on the outside for where my nostrils come out. You can kind of look at the side angle too, make sure that that lines up with what you're seeing. What I may need to do is slip and score a little bit more clay into place. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of build up that clay a little bit. Try to make it where your coil's big enough so you don't have to do this, but if necessary, you can always add a little bit more clay on as long as you are slipping and scoring. Every time you add clay, make sure you use your wooden tool or your finger to really smooth it together. That way it becomes one seamless piece of clay. I'm gonna use a little bit of water to kind of smooth that out. Okay, we're getting closer.
done. Second one done. Third one done. You're laying in your light source.
All right, now I'm gonna start working with the nostrils. So notice kind of how I'm moving my hands to push that clay where it needs to go to create the shape that I see. I'm going to take my wooden tool, I'm going to take the pointed edge, and I'm going to start to create the definition where the nostril lines up. And I can go back and smooth that out if needed.
As I look over these blocks from my vantage point, I'm seeing the darkest area of value.
A lot of it is just being able to look and sculpt what you see. So it involves some thought and asking yourself where you see the certain angles and what you need to do with your hands to create on that surface.
Where is it darkest? And lay that in. Everywhere that it's dark, I want to identify that it's darkest.
Okay, and I'm kind of looking at the side of my face in the mirror too.
Lay it in.
That way I make sure that I'm creating that accurately.
Where it is darkest and move your way out.
Okay, from there, with the nostrils, you want to make sure that you get the shape right. Okay, if you're just drilling a hole in the bottom of your nose, it's going to look very unrealistic. It's going to make you look more like you have a pig nose, and that's not what we're trying to accomplish. We want to create realistic features. So I'm going to take my clay, and I'm going to start just by kind of creating the shape that I see. Okay, for most of you, that will be more of an oval shape rather than a circle. You don't need to go super deep. You're just trying to kind of give the illusion of a shadow. Okay, so even that depth there is enough to create a shadow to make it look like there's a nostril in place. Obviously, craftsmanship is a huge part of this project. Even with your practice features, you want to make sure that you're taking your time and doing nice detailed work. So make sure it's nice and clean kind of around all of those edges. In order to make this doable, I need to do the other side. So I'm going to add that one in as well.
Subtle changes in light and dark. Recognizing your vantage point determines a lot of information.
Again, trying to get the proper shape. Now, as I do this, there's kind of the center part of your nose. Mine kind of comes down and attaches right to my upper lip. So what I think I need to do is actually add a little coil of clay in order to show that. Okay, as I do that, when I look at the side, this comes down too far, so I need to kind of push it in a little bit more. But you need to make sure that it lines up from every angle. Okay, that's how you're gonna really create a realistic looking nose, is if you're able to line it up from every angle, the front and the side on both sides. Okay, I need a little bit more up here. So I'm gonna kind of push that clay in that direction. And then in here, my nose almost has like a fold of skin right there, so I'm gonna add that in. The more details that you can put based on your particular subject, the more it's going to appear like that person. So just keep that in mind, okay? You really have to be observant with this project, actually looking at what you're trying to create. That's gonna help line things up more accurately. So as I do this, I'm getting closer, starting to look more and more like a nose. There's a lot more sculpting that could be done, but it just takes a matter of time. So hopefully you get kind of the basics of how that should look. Obviously this side is more refined. This side I need to go back and finish, but that's an example of how you would do a nose for your portrait practice.